Harlem, New York. 2:47 p.m. Saturday, August 10th, 1963. The temperature sits at 87 degrees. Heat rises from the asphalt of 125th Street and Lenox Avenue in shimmering waves. The smell of exhaust fumes mixes with cigarette smoke and the metallic scent of approaching violence. 12 NYPD squad cars form a perfect semicircle around a black 1962 Cadillac Eldorado. Red lights pulse against storefront windows. 36 officers stand behind open doors, service revolvers drawn, barrels trained on the driver's side window. Inside the Cadillac sits Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, 66 years old. Charcoal suit pressed sharp enough to cut glass. White shirt, black tie knotted with surgical precision. His hands rest motionless on the steering wheel. He hasn't moved in 4 minutes and 17 seconds, neither have the officers. The standoff creates a silence so absolute that pedestrians 2 blocks away stop walking to stare. Detective Captain Frank McKenna stands 20 feet from the Cadillac's driver door, Irish, 49 years old, 23 years on the force. His megaphone trembles in his grip despite the heat. Sweat runs down his neck, staining his collar. He's faced armed bank robbers and knife-wielding addicts, but this is different. This is systematic dread. Johnson. Exit the vehicle with your hands visible. McKenna's voice cracks on visible. Several officers shift their weight. 2 younger patrolmen tighten their grips until their knuckles turn bone white. Bumpy Johnson doesn't respond. He sits perfectly still, staring straight ahead through the windshield. Thunder rolls across the Harlem skyline. In the distance, lightning illuminates his face for 1 fraction of a second, and McKenna sees something that makes his stomach drop. Johnson is smiling. Not a grin, not a smirk, a smile of absolute certainty. The driver's door opens slowly. Johnson's right foot touches the pavement. Then, his left. He stands to his full height and turns to face 36 drawn weapons. His right hand holds something. Every finger moves to every trigger. McKenna's voice rises an octave. "Show us your hands." Now. Johnson raises his right hand deliberately, his fingers open. In his palm sits a black leather ledger, no bigger than a prayer book. He holds it between his thumb and index finger, extending it toward McKenna like a businessman offering a contract. His voice cuts through the heat with surgical precision. "You're going to want to see what's inside before you make your next decision, Captain." 72 hours later, Detective Captain Frank McKenna would submit his resignation from the NYPD. He would leave New York City entirely, relocating to a small town in Pennsylvania where nobody knew his name or his shame. He would never speak publicly about what was written in that ledger. The official police report from August 10, 1963, would be sealed by order of the Commissioner's office. It remains sealed to this day. The story of what Bumpy Johnson held in his hand that afternoon is a warning that history has tried to hide. If you enjoy these deep dives into the underworld, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee using the link in the description. Your support keeps these investigations alive. Now let's go back to August 7, 1963, 72 hours before 12 squad cars surrounded 1 man in the summer heat. Harlem, New York. Wednesday, August 7, 1963. 11:30 a.m. Small's Paradise sits half empty before the noon rush, cigarette smoke hanging low in the morning air. In booth number 4, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson wears a charcoal suit, white shirt, burgundy tie. Across from him sit 3 Harlem pastors counting donations for a new community center. $4,300 in small bills organized with surgical precision. This is legitimate business. Community protection, the delicate balance between street authority and neighborhood leadership that defines Johnson's power in Harlem. The front door opens with enough force to rattle the frame. Detective Captain Frank McKenna enters with 4 uniformed officers, removing his hat with deliberate disrespect. His muddy boots track dark prints across the freshly mopped white tiles, each step a calculated violation. McKenna approaches the booth, shoulders squared, hands resting near his service revolver. He stops at the table's edge, looking down at the cash and the 3 elderly reverends. His voice carries across the restaurant. "Well, well, laundering dirty money through Jesus now, are we?" McKenna doesn't wait for an answer. His arm sweeps across the table with brutal efficiency. $4,300 scatters across the floor in a cascade of bills. Quarters and dimes roll under nearby tables. His voice drops to a command. "Pick it up. On your knees. Let's see how holy you really are." The 3 men of God look at Bumpy, who gives the slightest nod. They lower themselves to the floor, joints cracking, dignity stripped away as they crawl collecting scattered donations while uniformed officers watch and smile. McKenna turns his attention to Bumpy, who hasn't moved. His hands remain flat on the table. McKenna leans close enough that his breath carries coffee and cigarettes. "You think you're untouchable, don't you? Uppity monkey playing king of the jungle." The racial slur hangs in the air like poison. But McKenna isn't finished. He whispers the threat that ensures his own destruction. "I'm going to have child services investigate that granddaughter of yours." Criminals don't deserve families. They deserve cages. The restaurant falls into absolute silence. Bumpy Johnson stares at McKenna for 43 seconds without blinking. The temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. Officers behind McKenna begin shifting their weight, sensing a power shift their captain is too arrogant to perceive. Without a word, Johnson stands. He buttons his suit jacket with deliberate movements. He doesn't look at the pastors on the floor or acknowledge the officers. He turns and walks toward the exit, treating McKenna as invisible, already erased. At the doorway, Bumpy stops. His associate Teddy Horn sits at the bar. Their eyes meet. Bumpy taps his right temple twice with his index finger. Teddy's face goes blank with understanding. Detective Captain Frank McKenna has been marked for systematic destruction. Lenox Avenue, Wednesday, August 7th, 1963, 3:15 p.m. The back room of Charlie's barbershop smells of talcum powder and stale cigars. No windows, 1 table, 2 chairs. Theodore Teddy Horn sits across from Bumpy Johnson, wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the single bare bulb overhead. Former accountant turned intelligence specialist, 15 years of turning numbers into weapons. Bumpy speaks without heat, without raised voice. "Any fool with a gun can kill a man, Teddy. Real power is making your enemy destroy himself with his own hands." He lights a cigarette, exhales slowly. "McKenna threatened my granddaughter. That requires precision. This isn't a street war. This is an audit." Teddy opens his notebook. The machinery of Harlem's Underworld begins to turn. Not with muscle, but with information. Hotel maids at the Teresa who clean rooms and hear conversations. Shushan boys stationed outside the precinct who polish badges and collect secrets. File clerks in City Hall who occasionally misplace documents for the right price. Phone operators who listen to clicks on the line. Bartenders in Hell's Kitchen who pour drinks and remember faces. Private investigators who photograph everything and ask no questions. Every loose word, every careless brag, every whispered complaint moves upward through channels that would impress military strategists. By 6:40 p.m., Teddy has McKenna's home address, salary, and declared assets. By 9:15 p.m., he has proof that McKenna spends Friday nights in illegal card games, losing money he doesn't have. By 2 a.m., the real damage surfaces. $12,000 in debt to Irish bookmakers on 10th Avenue, Teddy reports with surgical precision. He's been skimming evidence room cash for 6 years to stay alive. Bumpy listens without comment. But here's the beautiful part. Teddy continues. He's selling protection to the Genovese family. Tips them off before raids, keeps their operations clean. Monthly envelopes in exchange for looking the other way. And simultaneously shaking down black-owned businesses in Harlem for unofficial taxes. Playing both sides. Double loyalty to nobody. The hypocrisy is systematic. Documented. Weaponized. Thursday evening, August 8th. Bumpy opens his floor safe and retrieves a black leather book no bigger than a prayer book. The ledger. 12 years of corruption distilled into dates, amounts, locations, names. Every cop who took money. Every politician who bent rules. Every gangster who broke agreements. This is a weapon of mass destruction in paper form. McKenna is already there in fragments, small entries from 3 years ago, questionable evidence seizures, suspicious cash purchases. Now the scattered pieces form a complete picture of systematic betrayal. Bumpy doesn't want McKenna killed. Death is too quick, too merciful for the disrespect shown at Small's Paradise. He wants professional execution through the very system McKenna represents and corrupts, public humiliation by his own institution. He turns to a special section marked Final Accounts. Fewer names. Reserved for senior targets. He writes with the cold detachment of a coroner signing a death certificate. Debt. Capped, Frank McKenna. Below it the date. Then 3 words that seal the detective's fate. Public humiliation required. The trap is set. The gun is loaded. But the trigger will not be pulled by Bumpy Johnson. It will be pulled by the truth. New York City, Friday, August 9, 1963. 8 a.m., 4 manila envelopes move through Manhattan with surgical precision. FBI Field Office on East 69th Street. NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau on Broome Street. The New York-Amsterdam News editorial desk on 7th Avenue. Congressman Adam Clayton Powell Jr.'s office in the State Office Building. Each package identical. Brown paper. No return address. Each containing the paper autopsy of Detective Captain Frank McKenna's career. Inside lies 12 years of documented corruption distilled into photocopied evidence. February 12, 1961. $800 from Genovese associate Vincent Mauro for advance warning on warehouse raid. June 3, 1962, $1,200 for suppressing witness testimony in federal racketeering case. October 18, 1962, $2,000 for losing evidence that would have implicated 3 family soldiers. The photographs are more damaging than the numbers. Grainy black and white images of McKenna shaking hands with Anthony Fat Tony Salerno outside Rao's restaurant on Pleasant Avenue. McKenna leaning into a Cadillac on Mulberry Street, accepting a thick envelope. Time-stamped. Cross-reference to ledger entries with accounting precision. The receipts tell the story of unexplained wealth, Italian suits from Fifth Avenue tailors, a Rolex Submariner purchased with cash, jewelry for a mistress in Queens, down payment on a country house in Westchester, all purchased on a police captain's salary that cannot support the totals. Bank deposit records showing monthly cash infusions that dwarf his legitimate income by factors of 3 and 4. By 10:30 a.m., McKenna's phone rings. Internal Affairs. They want to discuss some irregularities in his financial disclosures. The tone is polite, bureaucratic, but the subtext cuts like a blade. Questions are coming. Deep questions. McKenna hangs up and makes a fatal calculation. His arrogance interprets the pressure as routine harassment, political maneuvering he can bully his way through. He doesn't recognize the trap closing around his throat with mathematical certainty. Pride blinds him to the reality that his career is already bleeding out on 4 different desks across the city. Desperate men make predictable mistakes. By noon, McKenna convinces himself that one spectacular arrest will deflect suspicion and restore his reputation. He needs a trophy. He needs Bumpy Johnson in handcuffs, paraded through Harlem like a conquered king. That afternoon, McKenna pulls 5 corrupt officers into a closed-door meeting. Men whose names also appear in various ledgers and files, though they don't know it yet. He promises them salvation through violence. We take Johnson down hard, we become heroes. The brass forgets everything else. We eliminate the source of our problems. The plan is brutally simple: fabricated weapons charges during a public traffic stop. Plant a .38 caliber revolver under the driver's seat. Claim Johnson reached for it, maybe rough him up for resisting, definitely arrest him with maximum force. 12 squad cars. Every available unit. Turn the king of Harlem into just another criminal in handcuffs. But in Harlem, walls have ears and silence has a price. Officer James Mitchell sits in the planning meeting, taking notes like a good soldier. What McKenna doesn't know is that Mitchell owes Bumpy Johnson for paying his mother's hospital bills when the department's insurance wouldn't cover experimental treatment. Within 2 hours of the meeting's end, every detail reaches Teddy Horn through channels that would impress military intelligence: time, location, officers involved, even the serial number of the gun to be planted. By evening, Teddy lays out the information for Bumpy like a battle plan. They could avoid the route. Switch cars. Disappear for a week until the heat dies down. Most men would choose survival over confrontation. Bumpy Johnson is not most men. He understands that avoiding the trap is weakness. Walking into it and dismantling it from the inside is power. He needs the confrontation to be public. He needs witnesses. He needs the entire neighborhood to see the law break itself against his resolve. Saturday, August 10th, 1963, 2:30 p.m. The black Cadillac Eldorado idles on 125th Street, air conditioning humming against the summer heat. In 17 minutes, 12 squad cars will surround this intersection. In the passenger seat, his associate checks his watch, sweat beading despite the cool air. We can still turn off, Bumpy. Take 8th Avenue. Make this problem disappear. Bumpy reaches into his jacket and removes the black leather ledger, settling it into his right palm like a loaded weapon. 12 years of documented corruption. Names, dates, amounts, photographs, the complete destruction of McKenna's world condensed into paper and ink. No, he says with absolute certainty. I want every car, every gun, every witness. I want the whole precinct to watch him hang himself. He closes his fingers around the ledger and drives toward his own arrest, knowing that the trap was never meant for him. Harlem, New York. Saturday, August 10th, 1963. 2:47 p.m. 12 night squad cars form a perfect semicircle on 125th Street and Lenox Avenue. Red lights pulsing against storefront windows in silent rhythm. 36 officers crouch behind open doors, service revolvers drawn, all barrels converging on a single black Cadillac Eldorado. The formation is systematic overkill, military precision designed to transform neighborhood royalty into common criminal theater. This is humiliation weaponized for maximum public impact. Heat rises from asphalt in shimmering waves. Within minutes, more than 200 civilians line the sidewalks, drawn by the spectacle of overwhelming force concentrated on one man. Mothers pull children close. Shopkeepers emerge from doorways. Everyone understands they are witnessing something that will echo through Harlem for generations. Detective Captain Frank McKenna stands 20 feet from the Cadillac, megaphone trembling in his grip despite the summer heat. His voice cuts through the August air with manufactured authority. Johnson, exit the vehicle like the criminal you are. The racial slur follows, deliberate and loud enough to carry across the intersection. Get out here, boy. Hands where I can see them. The driver's door opens with deliberate slowness. Bumpy Johnson steps onto the pavement with measured precision. Charcoal suit without a wrinkle. White shirt crisp despite 87-degree heat. His right hand holds a small black leather book between thumb and index finger. His posture is perfect. His movements are calculated. There is no fear in his body language, no submission. No acknowledgement that 36 guns are trained on his chest. The contrast is devastating. McKenna barks commands like a man trying to convince himself he has power. Bumpy moves like a man who knows he already won. McKenna approaches, hand hovering near his service revolver, expecting to find the planted weapon during the search. His eyes lock on the leather book. What the hell is that? Bumpy extends the ledger toward McKenna like a businessman offering a contract. His voice carries across the intersection with surgical precision, loud enough for every officer and witness to hear. This book contains 12 years of evidence about corruption in your precinct. Dates, amounts, names, photographs of you with your Italian friends, everything. McKenna's face drains of color. You have one choice, Captain. Bumpy's tone never rises, never threatens, states facts with mathematical certainty. Arrest me, and copies go to the FBI within the hour. Every page, every dirty dollar you and your friends ever touched. Or get in your cars and leave Harlem forever. The psychological breakdown happens in real time. McKenna's hand shakes. Sweat runs down his neck, staining his collar. He realizes with sickening clarity that he has been checkmated, that arresting Bumpy Johnson will trigger systematic destruction of not just his career, but the entire corrupt network keeping him out of prison. The crowd begins to understand. This is not an arrest. This is public execution of authority through superior intelligence and preparation. Whispers ripple through gathered witnesses. Someone laughs. The sound spreads like infection. McKenna's hand hovers over his holster, trapped between impossible choices. Arrest and guaranteed destruction. Retreat and lose all credibility forever. Across from him, Bumpy Johnson stands perfectly still, ledger extended, waiting for McKenna to choose his own fate, while 200 people watch a white police captain realize he has no power at all. McKenna's hand hovers over his holster for 43 seconds that stretch like hours. Pride screams for him to draw the weapon, make the arrest, prove he still commands fear in Harlem. But survival instinct cuts through the noise like a surgical blade. If he arrests Bumpy Johnson, the ledger moves. If the ledger moves, everything ends. Biology defeats ego. He drops his hand and turns to 36 assembled officers, voice cracking as he attempts to salvage dignity from complete defeat. Stand down. Routine identification check complete. Subject is cleared to go. The lie is so transparent it insults the intelligence of every witness present. The crowd's reaction detonates across 125th Street like a controlled explosion. Laughter erupts from 200 throats, raw and uncontainable, rolling in waves that crash against building facades. Men clap with violent enthusiasm. Women shout from apartment windows. Children point and giggle at the spectacle of overwhelming force retreating before one man with a book. This is not just amusement. This is the sound of years of harassment, shakedowns, and systematic humiliation collapsing into one moment of perfect reversal. Bumpy Johnson closes the ledger with deliberate precision, nods once to the nearest officer in a gesture of calm dominance, and walks back to his Cadillac. No hurry, no celebration, no acknowledgement of the chaos surrounding him. He opens the driver's door, adjusts his cuffs, and starts the engine. The Eldorado pulls away at exactly 25 miles per hour, slow enough for everyone to see his face through the windshield. Calm, unbothered, untouchable, McKenna stands motionless in the center of the intersection, while 12 squad cars sit useless on the corners like abandoned theater props, red lights still pulsing against storefronts in mechanical rhythm. The systematic destruction begins before the dust settles. By 6:00 p.m., copies of ledger evidence arrive at the New York Times city desk. By 8:00 p.m., 3 investigative reporters cross-reference names with bank records and federal files. By Sunday morning, the front page screams headlines that will echo through City Hall: systematic police corruption in Harlem, detective captain linked to organized crime protection racket. McKenna's life unravels with the brutal precision of a controlled demolition. Monday morning, Internal Affairs opens formal proceedings, seizing his financial records and badge simultaneously. Tuesday brings the financial avalanche, Irish bookmakers in Hell's Kitchen realizing McKenna no longer carries police protection. Call in his $12,000 debt with 24-hour ultimatum. Wednesday afternoon, his Italian crime family contacts refuse phone calls entirely. Fat Tony Salerno sends word through intermediaries that McKenna has become radioactive, a liability too dangerous to acknowledge. The smart violence escalates beyond professional destruction into personal annihilation. His bank accounts freeze pending investigation of suspicious deposits. His pension suspends indefinitely. 23 years of service held hostage by his own corruption. His wife receives anonymous phone calls at night, calm voices detailing every mistress, every bribe, every lie that built their comfortable life in Westchester. Hotel names, room numbers, dates and times no stranger should possess. Inside the precinct, panic spreads like infection. Officers whose names appear alongside McKenna's in photocopied ledger pages begin filing for immediate transfers to Staten Island, Queens, anywhere that is not Harlem. Some resign outright, citing sudden family emergencies or career changes. The domino effect cleanses the station house more effectively than any mayoral reform commission, the system eating its own corruption to avoid choking on the scandal. Harlem transforms overnight. Black-owned businesses go a full week without shakedown visits or demanded envelopes. Police harassment drops to levels not seen in 15 years. Street vendors operate without being pushed off corners. The community breathes deeper, understanding that their king didn't fight the system with violence but used the system's own rules to execute justice with mathematical precision. 2 weeks later, Wednesday, August 24, 1963. 11 p.m. Small's Paradise hums with low conversation and cigarette smoke. Bumpy Johnson sits in booth number 4, reviewing community center construction budgets with 3 local contractors. The front door opens with a sound like breaking glass. Frank McKenna enters. But this is not the man who once commanded fear through badge and uniform. His cheap suit hangs wrinkled and stained, no tie. Shirt collar yellowed with sweat and desperation. His face carries the gray pallor of a man who has not slept in days, who has watched his entire world collapse into rubble and debt. He stumbles toward booth number 4, gripping tables for support, reeking of cheap whiskey and failure. The restaurant falls silent, every conversation stopping mid-sentence, as witnesses recognize the former detective captain reduced to beggar. McKenna reaches the table, hands shaking as he grips the edge. His voice cracks with alcohol and desperation. "Please, Johnson, I need help. Money, anything. They're going to kill me if I don't pay. I have nothing left. Bumpy Johnson does not look up from his papers. He turns a page with deliberate slowness, reviewing construction estimates with the same attention he might give to stock market reports. He signals the waiter for more coffee, discusses window installation costs with the contractors, continues his business as if the broken man standing 3 feet away does not exist. For 90 seconds, McKenna stands there weeping, begging the man he once called boy to save his life from creditors, who now hunt him like prey. His pleas echo off restaurant walls while Bumpy Johnson treats him not as an enemy, but as empty space. Already dead, already erased from Harlem history. Security escorts McKenna into the night, sobbing into darkness while Bumpy Johnson finishes his coffee and returns to legitimate business. The ultimate form of power has been demonstrated. The most devastating insult possible has been delivered. Complete irrelevance. The confrontation on August 10, 1963, carved a permanent divide in Harlem's collective memory. Before that day, squad cars rolled through the neighborhood with unquestioned authority, backed by institutional racism and the assumption that badges granted immunity from consequence. After, every uniform walking those streets carried the shadow of 12 cars retreating from one man who possessed something more dangerous than any weapon: documented truth about their corruption. The incident proved that intelligence and preparation could puncture institutional power with surgical precision. Bumpy Johnson demonstrated that the system's own rules and procedures could become weapons if wielded with sufficient patience and strategic thinking. This wasn't street justice, this was psychological warfare executed through bureaucracy. Detective Captain Frank McKenna's destruction unfolded with the brutal efficiency of Greek tragedy. His resignation came September 3, 1963, officially framed as personal reasons, while federal prosecutors built evidence-tampering cases from the very ledger entries he thought buried. Criminal charges stripped his pension. Gambling debts, now public knowledge, triggered bankruptcy proceedings that liquidated the Westchester House, Italian suits, and every symbol of corrupt prosperity. By February 1964, McKenna had vanished from New York entirely, relocating to rural Pennsylvania, where nobody knew his shame. He died sometime in the early 1970s, alone and forgotten. His obituary running 3 sentences in a local paper that misspelled his name. The black leather ledger itself transcended physical object to become Harlem mythology. After Bumpy's death from heart failure in 1968, federal agents tore apart his properties searching for the infamous book. They found nothing. Some claim Teddy Horn destroyed it hours after Bumpy's passing. Others believe it was passed to trusted successors who used its secrets to maintain peace from shadows. The ledger's disappearance only amplified its power, transforming it into a symbol of invisible leverage that outlived its creator. Surviving witnesses reveal McKenna's file was merely one volume in a vast library of secrets. Bumpy operated like a grandmaster playing chess against opponents who only understood checkers, maintaining similar dossiers on judges, politicians, and rival crime bosses. He created a system of mutually assured destruction where information served as primary currency and violence became merely the tax paid when documentation failed. This philosophy influenced civil rights leaders who began systematically documenting police brutality, creating paper trails that would eventually force reforms the system fought to prevent. The strategy of using evidence as ammunition spread beyond Harlem, inspiring activists nationwide to build cases with documentation rather than rely on testimony authorities could dismiss. The official police report from August 10th remains sealed after 60 years. Freedom of Information Act requests consistently hit walls of privacy and internal security exemptions that make no logical sense for a 6-decade-old incident. The continued classification suggests what Bumpy revealed threatened power structures far beyond one corrupt captain. August 10, 1963 wasn't about 12 squad cars surrounding one man in summer heat. It was a master strategist proving that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun, but knowledge, patience, and discipline to let enemies destroy themselves. McKenna expected to find a planted revolver. Instead, he found 12 years of his own corruption documented with accounting precision, held by the man he tried to humiliate. In the Underworld, they still repeat this story as curriculum. Real power belongs to whoever knows exactly where you're vulnerable and waits for the perfect moment to let you hang yourself with your own rope.